Aloha and welcome to your guided, highly leisurely, purposefully stretched out stroll through the bustling heart of Kahului. If you are standing at the Kahului Transit Center on Vavau Street, you are in the right place. Go ahead and put your phone in your pocket, make sure your earbuds are comfortable, and just stand there for a moment. Look around you. Breathe in that warm, tropical air. We are about to embark on a 0.7-mile journey. Now, your map app probably told you this would take 15 minutes, but we are not here to rush. We are running on Hawaiian time today. Hawaiian time is a cultural phenomenon. It means the meeting starts when everyone gets there. It means if the surf is up, the store opens a little later. And it means we are going to take a full 30 minutes to walk a distance that a motivated mongoose could cover in 2. So, let's get our bearings before we even take our first step. Look at the buses pulling in and out of the transit center. This is the central hub for the Maui bus system, which connects the island in a way that is incredibly vital for the local workforce. Kahului is not the Maui you see on the glossy brochures at the travel agency. You aren't going to find many infinity pools, poolside cabanas, or people sipping Mai Tais out of hollowed-out pineapples around here. This is the commercial and industrial heartbeat of the island. This is where the residents come to buy their groceries in bulk, where they go to the DMV, and where the heavy lifting of island life actually happens. All right, let's start moving. Go ahead and face toward School Street, and begin walking down Vavau Street at the slowest, most relaxed pace you can possibly muster. Imagine you are walking through molasses, which, historically speaking, is actually incredibly appropriate for this specific piece of land. As you take these first slow steps, I want you to erase the pavement, the cars, and the concrete buildings from your mind. Rewind the clock about 100 years. If you were standing exactly where you are right now in the early 1900s, you would be standing in the middle of a massive, sprawling sea of green. Sugarcane. For over a century, sugar was the undisputed king of Maui. The island's economy, its physical landscape, and its incredible cultural diversity were all entirely shaped by the sugar industry. The area you are walking through was dominated by the Maui Agricultural Company, which later became part of Alexander and Baldwin, one of the Big Five corporations that essentially ran Hawaii for decades. Keep strolling down Vavau Street. You are going to take a right turn in a little bit, but we have plenty of time. Think about what it took to grow sugar here. Kahului is located on the Isthmus of Maui, the flat valley between the towering dormant volcano Haleakala to your east and the rugged West Maui Mountains to your west. Because of this geography, Maui is known as the Valley Isle. But this valley used to be incredibly dry and dusty. To grow thousands of acres of thirsty sugarcane, the plantation owners had to engineer massive gravity-fed irrigation ditch systems that brought billions of gallons of water out of the wet, rainy windward rainforests of East Maui and dumped it right here onto the Central Plains. It was an engineering marvel, though one that has led to complex water rights battles that are still being fought in the courts today. When the cane was ready to harvest, they would set the fields on fire. The controlled burns would burn off the sharp, razor-like leaves of the cane plant and drive out the bugs, leaving only the sugar-rich stalks behind. The smoke would billow hundreds of feet into the air, and a black, flaky ash would drift down over the island. Locals used to call it Maui snow. You'd have to sweep it off your lanai and wash it off your car almost daily during harvest season. The last sugar mill on Maui HC&S closed its doors for good in 2016. It marked the end of an era. The trains that used to haul the cane, the smoke in the air, the massive green fields, they are all part of history now. All right, you should be coming up on your first turn. You are going to take a right, walk a very short distance, just about 150 feet, and then you are going to take a left. We are making our way toward Lono Avenue. As you make those turns and get yourself oriented toward Lono, let's talk about the people who worked those massive sugar plantations, because their legacy is the true heart of Hawaii. The plantation owners needed cheap labor, so they brought in workers from all over the world. They brought people from China, Japan, the Philippines, Portugal, Korea, and Puerto Rico. When these diverse groups of people arrived, They were intentionally housed in segregated camps in the cane fields to prevent them from organizing or unionizing. But out in the fields, working under the hot Maui sun, they had to figure out a way to communicate with each other and with their English-speaking overseers. This necessity birthed Hawaiian Pidgin, or Hawaii Creole English. It is a beautiful rhythmic language that borrows vocabulary and grammar from Hawaiian, English, Japanese, Portuguese, and Ilocano. If you hear locals talking in line at the grocery store today, and it sounds like English but with a different cadence and unfamiliar words, that is Pidgin. It is the linguistic glue that brought the plantation workers together. They also shared their food, leading to the invention of the local plate lunch, a culinary masterpiece consisting of 2 scoops of white rice, a scoop of creamy macaroni salad, and a main dish like chicken katsu, teriyaki beef, or kalua pig. It is carb-heavy, calorie-dense, and was designed to fuel a man swinging a cane machete for 10 hours a day. It is definitely not designed for someone taking a 30-minute walk to walk 0.7 miles, but will burn those calories later at the arcade. You should be approaching Lono Avenue now. When you reach it, go ahead and turn right onto Lono Avenue. Keep that leisurely pace. Feel the breeze hitting your face? Those are the trade winds. They are nature's air conditioning in Hawaii, blowing in from the northeast. Before modern air conditioning, the architecture of Hawaii was entirely designed around catching these breezes. As you walk down Lono Avenue, look at the residential neighborhoods branching off around you. You are walking right through the middle of what was once marketed as Maui's Dream City. After World War II, the sugar companies realized that the old plantation camp system was obsolete. The workers had unionized, they had fought in the war, and they wanted a piece of the American dream. They didn't want to live in company-owned shacks anymore. So in 1948, Alexander and Baldwin drew up a master plan to build a completely new, modern, planned community right here in Kahului. This was the Dream City. It allowed plantation workers the opportunity to actually buy their own homes. They built thousands of houses using hollow tile concrete blocks, which are virtually indestructible and termite-proof, and simple single-story floor plans. And the price? If you were buying a brand new 3-bedroom home in the Dream City in 1950, it would have cost you roughly $6,000. Let's just pause and let that sink in. $6,000. Today, the median home price on Maui hovers comfortably over $1 million. If you walk into a real estate office on Maui today with $6,000, they might, if they're feeling generous, sell you a very nice picture of a house. Or maybe a moderately sized storage shed. The economic reality of living in paradise has changed drastically since the Dream City was built. But generations of local families still live in these original hollow tile homes, adding extensions, building carports, and passing them down from grandparents to parents to children. Keep strolling down Lono Avenue. We have about 230 feet to go before our next turn. Take a look at the plants and trees around you. You might see the sprawling umbrella-like canopy of a monkeypod tree or smell the sweet, heavy perfume of a plumeria tree. Plumerias are the flowers most commonly used to make leis. If you see one that has fallen on the ground, pick it up and smell it. Just don't pick them off the tree without asking. That's bad form. Also, keep your eyes peeled toward the gutters and the bushes for Maui's unofficial, incredibly vocal mascot, the feral chicken. You will almost certainly see a rooster strutting across a lawn or a parking lot like he holds the deed to the property. There is a persistent myth that all the chickens in Hawaii escaped during Hurricane Iniki in 1992. While some domestic birds definitely got blown out of their coops, the truth is that chickens have been here for centuries. The original Polynesian voyagers brought the red jungle fowl, or moa, with them in their canoes over 1,000 years ago. Today's feral chickens are a chaotic genetic mashup of ancient jungle fowl and modern agricultural escapees. They have no natural predators here, well, except for cars, and annoyed residents who are tired of being woken up at 4 in the morning. People often ask why we don't bring in foxes or something to eat the chickens, but we already learned our lesson with that kind of biological pest control. Back in the 1880s, the sugar planters brought the Indian mongoose to Hawaii to kill the rats that were eating the sugarcane. It seemed like a great idea, except rats are nocturnal and mongooses are diurnal. So, the mongooses woke up, the rats went to sleep, they never saw each other, and the mongooses just decided to eat all the native bird eggs instead. So now we have rats, mongooses, and chickens. It is a very busy ecosystem. Alright, you should be at the intersection of Lono Avenue and West Kamehameha Avenue. I want you to turn left onto West Kamehameha Avenue. This road is named after King Kamehameha the Great. He is easily the most famous and consequential figure in Hawaiian history. Back in the late 1700s, Hawaii was not a unified kingdom. Each island, and sometimes different parts of the same island, was ruled by different rival chiefs. Kamehameha, who was from the Big Island of Hawaii, was a brilliant political strategist, a massive, physically imposing warrior, and one of the first Hawaiian leaders to recognize the power of Western technology. He traded with foreign ships for muskets and cannons, and brought foreign advisors into his inner circle. He didn't just walk into Maui, he invaded it. Just a few miles west of where you are walking right now, up in the deeply carved, impossibly green Io Valley, Kamehameha's forces clashed with the Maui army in 1790 at the Battle of Kaʻanapali. It was a brutal, devastating conflict. The name Kaʻanapali roughly translates to the damming of the waters, because it is said that so many warriors fell in the battle that their bodies literally choked the flow of the Io stream. Kamehameha won that battle, and eventually went on to unite all the Hawaiian islands under one rule by 1810. So, as you walk past the tire shops, the medical clinics, and the strip malls lining this avenue, remember the absolute weight of the history behind the name on the street signs. We are going to walk down West Kamehameha for about a fifth of a mile, and then the road will take a slight right and become East Kamehameha Avenue. Just follow the curve of the road. No sharp turns yet. Just a gentle, lazy curve to the right. As you walk this stretch, notice the traffic. You are in the central nervous system of the island's logistics. Just a mile or so away to your left is the Kahului harbor. It is the only deep draft harbor on the island. If you look closely at the horizon past the buildings, you might even see the massive red and white cranes used to unload the container ships. Because Hawaii is the most isolated population center on the face of the earth, roughly 80 to 90% of everything we consume has to be shipped in across thousands of miles of open ocean. The cars driving past you, the clothes you are wearing, the lumber used to build these shops, the food in the grocery stores, it all comes in on massive Matson or Pasha cargo ships, is unloaded by those cranes at Kahului Harbor, packed onto semi-trucks, and driven down these very roads. This absolute reliance on imported goods is the other half of the explanation for the cost of living here. The Paradise Tax isn't just about high demand for real estate. It's about the literal cost of floating a box of cereal across the Pacific Ocean. It makes you appreciate the ingenuity of the ancient Polynesians who managed to survive and thrive here for centuries using only the materials they could grow from the volcanic soil or pull from the ocean. Okay, keep following East Kamehameha Avenue. You are going to walk another tenth of a mile or so. We are getting closer to the commercial epicenter of the Dream City. Ahead of you and to your left is the general footprint of the Maui Mall. Now, when I say mall, do not picture a massive, multi-level indoor glass and steel cathedral of capitalism. In Hawaii, we do things outside. The Maui Mall is an open-air shopping center. It is one of the older shopping centers on the island, and it has a very distinct, relaxed, local vibe compared to the more tourist-heavy shopping districts in Lahaina or Wailea. In a moment, you are going to turn left to head into the mall property. Go ahead and take that left turn now, making your way about 450 feet into the complex. As you walk into the Maui Mall area, you'll see a mix of big box stores and tiny local establishments. This mall is a perfect microcosm of modern Maui, a place where global corporate franchises sit right next to multi-generational local family businesses. And speaking of multi-generational local businesses, I have to tell you about a culinary icon that lives within this very mall. While our final destination is the fun factory, you absolutely must know about Tasaka Giri Giri. It is a tiny, unassuming little shop in this mall, but it is famous across the entire state. Giri is a frozen dessert. It is not ice cream. It is not sherbet. It is not shave ice. It is a secret family recipe that has been guarded by the Tasaka family for over a century. It was originally created by Jokichi Tasaka back in the early 1900s. He called it goody goody, but because of the Japanese pronunciation of English words, it evolved into giri. It usually only comes in two flavors, strawberry and pineapple. It is served in little paper cups with a flat wooden spoon. It is icy, creamy, perfectly sweet, and tastes exactly like childhood on Maui. People who move away from the island will literally buy it frozen in insulated cooler bags to take on airplanes back to the mainland. It is that serious. If you have any room in your stomach after this exhausting walk, I highly recommend finding the Tasaka Giri shop before you leave today. 2 scoops, one of each flavor. Trust me. All right, let's navigate the final stretch. You are going to take another left turn inside the mall pathways, walk about 200 feet, and then take a final right turn. You are looking for Unit A13, but honestly, you probably won't need to look at the unit numbers. You will know you are getting close by the sound. Listen for it. Under the ambient noise of the wind and the traffic, you should start to hear a chaotic symphony of digital bells, electronic chimes, the heavy thud of plastic balls hitting targets, and the synthetic synthesized music of racing games. You are approaching the fun factory. Go ahead and walk up to the entrance and just stand there for a moment.